What's going on, everybody? Welcome in Wednesday morning edition of the Daily Dime here at FTNFantasy.com. My name is Zac Graham, aka Kawaisenberg DFS. Solo stream here today for a 14 gamer. So we've got this big, massive slate to get through before we can focus on food, family, and football tomorrow. Good to see Derek in here. We'll let everybody file in on this Wednesday morning. Derek said smashed 2 parlays last night, including Nurk, Brogdon under, and Castle points and rebounds. Thanks, gents. So love to see that. And then injuries galore right now. Yeah, we'll talk about that, of course. But well done by you, Derek. Definitely disappointing that Poole sat out. Right, the Brogdon under assist hit even with Jordan Poole out. And then, of course, if you were in the FTN Fantasy Discord, we were on some Giannis props, fantasy score and the like, and then he sits out. And I know Giannis was also a taco on Prize Picks yesterday, so just unfortunate there. And, talking about tonight, we'll, of course, get into the DFS side of things, but I think every team that played last night but the Bucks are on the second end of the back-to-back here tonight. So we are still waiting on injury reports for the Bulls, for the Rockets, for the Wizards, for the Heat, the Wolves, Lakers, Spurs, Suns, and Jazz. So certainly not surprised to see guys from those teams rest tonight, or maybe, bumps or bruises from Tuesday night that they take a seat here on Wednesday. So I do think that this slate from a DFS perspective, and we will hit the props here in a moment, I do think it's going to look completely different by the time we get to lock. And, of course, DraftKings locked some of those games off of their main slate. So 11 games on DK, the full 14-game menu over there on FanDuel. I think we will start to get some of these injury reports on the 1:30. So about 90 minutes away from starting to get some of that news rolling in. And then, of course, throughout the rest of the afternoon. Good to see Albert in here. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend, and everybody tuned in. I know we'll be bouncing those back and forth between today and tomorrow, right? But it's so close. We're so close to having the turkey, the potatoes, the stuffing, the desserts, whatever else you enjoy at your Thanksgiving dinner. I'm very excited for it. About the 13th time I've said it here this week. So let's jump into some of the props here. We'll pull up the Prize Picks tool here at FTN Fantasy. And let's talk through some of these here. Maybe we can get one more zoom, maybe helps us out there. Yeah, I think that's better. So you can see some of the props here at the top of the tool on our Wednesday morning are some of those attempts props. And so, again, this is the Prize Picks tool here at FTN Fantasy, but you can use this tool to, check lines against our projections for any of the pick'em sites, Underdog, Sleeper, Boom, what have you, some of the other smaller sites as well. And if the lines are different, which you frequently will see, when you're shopping between those prop sites, you have this user line box here. So you can see the top prop in the tool right now over at Prize Picks is the over on Nikola Jokic's field goals attempted. And so let's say, another site had that at 19.5 instead of 19. You can type in the 19.5 if my keyboard will work. There we go. And you can, throw that in there, see what it does to your win percentage. Of course, if you're picking multiple props from the same game, you will see what the tool thinks about that in terms of a correlation boost. So we're not going to mess with the attempts props at this point of the morning, but I am going to get a refresh on my Underdog because I'm still waiting on stocks. We're still waiting on fantasy points. We'll see if they give us any of those. But I've got some here in the hopper. Let's hit that zoom out by 1 because then we can see the more or less than recommendations there on the screen. So I want to start in New Orleans, and you can see one of the top props here in the tool is Trey Murphy III, and actually going lower than 17.5 on his points. That's not what I want to hit first. So let's go to this game, and you can sort by game. And I want to go to this third prop right here, which is Scotty Barnes, sitting at 7 rebounds right now over at Prize Picks. But on Underdog, and we'll get that refresh here. Let me pull up my Scotty Barnes. He's sitting at 7.5. And we are getting a 1.12x multiplier on the higher than 7.5 rebounds. And that's what I want to do here this morning as our first pick. And let's talk about why. So last season, Scotty Barnes, 60 appearances, if I recall correctly, 8.2 rebounds per game. Now, of course, been a little bit abbreviated here this season with the facial fracture, I believe it was, that kept him out for, I think, double-digit games, if I recall correctly. So just 7 appearances, 7.9 rebounds per game in those 7. Then he's over 7.5 rebounds in just 3 of his 7 appearances. But I do want to, of course, I've dove into the game log there. Let's get some further context on some of those times he came up short on this number. 1, they got run off the court, and that might be putting it nicely, by Cleveland on opening night. So it was 6 boards for Scotty in that game in just 26 minutes. And then another game, he played just 27 minutes, and that was the first game back from the facial fracture against Minnesota, and he had 27 minutes in that game. Right, so he's played between 34 and 37 minutes in the other 5 appearances so far this season. And you can see that we have him projected for just a touch under 8.5 rebounds here tonight, and just a 3-point spread on the road against the Pelicans here tonight. And the Pelicans, a team getting a little bit more healthy headed into Thanksgiving here. We will get the return of DeJounte Murray, who also went out in the Pelicans debut, right, fractured his hand. But that doesn't change the fact that the Pelicans are a little bit undersized in their front court. Like, Yves Missi has been more serviceable so far than I expected, and I think than the general consensus expected. And Daniel Theis has kind of found himself out of the rotation more often than not over the last couple weeks. Still no Zion, right? So I do think that there is more opportunity than your average game here for Scotty to get on the boards. We know he's going to be out there a ton as long as this game remains in the balance. Again, a 3-point spread in favor of the home team, the Pelicans, here tonight. But I like getting to Scotty here. I think this is, again, from a DFS perspective as well. I have interest in Scotty. He did us really well the other night at very low ownership as one of my top plays on that Monday night slate. So I don't think, we're not looking for the same type of massive game on the prop side. We're just looking for him to hit the glass. And again, I think this line, especially on Underdog, where we're getting the bonus multiplier, right, 1.12x on his over 7.5 rebounds. I like this prop a good bit here tonight. So we're going to start with the Scotty Barnes over 7.5 or higher than 7.5 rebounds here on Underdog. So let's reset the tool here. Make sure every game is showing, and let's get back to this first page. And actually, let's take one off this first page here. We're going to Philly, okay, and we're going to take Andre Drummond and his rebound prop at 7.5. So back-to-back 7.5 rebound props here to start the Daily Dime on our Wednesday. But let's talk about Drummond here, right? And he's been underwhelming, and that fits into the theme of the 76ers this year. And again, underwhelming might be putting it nicely. But Drummond, he's still averaging 8.5 rebounds per game in 20.9 minutes per game in his 15 appearances this season. He's been over the 7.5 number in 8 of those 15 appearances. And now, right, looking at the full season with Embiid out to start the year, Paul George out to start the year, then PG comes back, then Embiid comes back for a few games, in and out of the lineup now. Both of those guys back out here tonight. And we saw last game, Gershon Yabusele got the start in Philadelphia's last game, and it did not go well against Ivica Zubac and the Clippers. And so one thing that I did note from that game is that even though Andre Drummond, again, has been seeing, mid to high teens in minutes over the last 4 games, we saw Nick Nurse go to him very early in the third quarter in place of Caleb Martin. And so you had Yabusele slide to the 4. So Nurse is showing the willingness, especially when they get in a tough spot, to go bigger and put Yabu at the 4 and Drum at the 5, which we saw more often in the first week or two of the season. So Drummond, looking at his rebound rates, right? Because I also think the matchup against Houston, right? Alperen Sengun just little boyed Rudy Gobert last night, 22-point triple-double, if I recall correctly. So Drummond, I guess I'm kind of bouncing between what I want to talk about with rebound rate and the matchup. So let's talk about the matchup first. But we've got him for 20 minutes right now in our morning run of projections here at FTN Fantasy, which is higher than what he's seen over the last couple games. But I think that number could end up being even higher because I think we could see Nick Nurse start Andre Drummond against Sengun tonight. Yabusele is a big boy, right? It's 6'8", 260. But Alperen Sengun, bigger boy. And I think that it makes more sense in this matchup to me. Again, I'm not Nick Nurse. I'm not an NBA championship winning coach, but I think we could see Drummond get the start here tonight. Which again, then this line would come down as fast as the sites could possibly get it down. So even if that doesn't come to pass, right? We don't get 20 plus minutes from Drummond here tonight, and he ends up in the mid to high teens once again. And this will probably happen regardless, right? Houston probably going to get the win here tonight against the Sixers, just given the different trajectories of these two clubs. Rockets are just 5-point home favorites, though. 219 implied total. It's not getting down into the disgusting range from a total standpoint there. But, okay, let's talk about his rebound rate, too. Because I wanted to look. Drummond has been disappointing from a fantasy standpoint. When he's getting the starts at the beginning of the year, we're thinking, okay, we've got a 6K Andre Drummond on DraftKings or FanDuel starting, projected for upper 20s, maybe even touching 30 minutes in those games. We're windmill slamming him in. And it was disappointment after disappointment to start the year from a statistical standpoint. So is he getting worse from a rate standpoint? 23.5% rebound rate this season, which is the lowest for Drummond since his 2020-21 season, which I think was with the Lakers. But it's been many years since he has rebounded, or his rebound rate has been this low, right? But 23.5 for a total rebound rate, that is, where do you think that ranks in the NBA this season? 23.5% rebound rate. If you said first, you're correct. He has the highest rebound rate in the league this season so far. So I think 7.5 here, we're getting 1.05x for the over 7.5 rebounds on Andre Drummond. And again, we know one of the best rebounders still in the league. Even if he doesn't hit that 20-minute mark or go over it or get the start in the dream scenario for our entries here this morning, I still think he can get over this number in a very limited amount of time. We've seen it this year. We've seen it over the last, 10 years of Andre Drummond's career, bouncing around from, his first rookie stint in Detroit and then bouncing from team to team over the last 5 or 6. The one thing that travels, even while his total rebound rate is a little bit down this year from the last couple, he's still elite in terms of rebounding. So I like this prop as well. Again, starting off our day with 2 over 7.5 rebound props at above that 1x multiplier on underdogs. So I like this. Let's see, I'm getting a couple couple messages. Dove into the minutes this morning. That's why. So not only is Tommy DeVito not flying to Dallas with the Giants, but he didn't practice today. Well, I imagine he's out then, Shefty. All right, let's get to a third prop here. We'll round out a 3-pick entry to start our morning, and then we will check out potentially any fantasy point props or some stocks props that may have populated. And again, if you're watching this live, of course, if you're already watching here on YouTube, you can jump into the chat. Let me know any sort of props that you may have your eye on here this morning. More than happy to discuss that with you all. And if you're watching on Twitter, you can hop into the YouTube while we're live here and join in the conversation. Yeah, you know, right. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Hit the like button on this video. If you're on Twitter, you know, like and retweet, all that good stuff, right? It helps us grow the channel, helps us grow the stream. All right. Again, we're going to have, we already have an extensive injury report, as Derek brought up in the chat right off the rip here this morning. And we're going to have more injury reports pop throughout the day. But one that we already know is the Sacramento Kings. So let's get to Kings and Wolves here in the tool. And you can see the top of this tool in this game specifically, liking a lot of the more than selections over there at Prize Picks. You see Ant Edwards, rebounds and points, Gobert points, Sabonis, rebounds and points. But I'm actually going to bypass all of that and go back to a pick that we have been touching on multiple times over the last 2 weeks in shorthanded scenarios for Sacramento. And that is De'Aaron Fox and his line of 27.5 points here tonight. Now, his projection is not that rosy, right? It's a lean over here with about 28.7 points in terms of Fox's projection there. But we have no DeMar DeRozan tonight. He's going to take a seat. Trey Lyles is also out now. And so we know about the rates for De'Aaron Fox when we had DeMar and Sabonis off the court, and Malik Monk, right, over the last 10 days or so before Malik Monk made his return last time out. But I think what we should be most concerned with here is the absence of DeMar DeRozan, because in 265 minutes, with DeMar DeRozan off the floor this season, De'Aaron Fox has a 39.4% usage rate. That is basically SGA without Chet in terms of the usage rate. Okay, so we also know that some of the minutes in that 265-minute sample came with no Malik Monk, came with no Sabonis, right? We had those couple games, so he was able to kind of boost these numbers up, right? So let's put Sabonis on the court with DeMar off. That takes us down to just a 110-minute sample size with Sabonis and Fox on the court this season and no DeMar DeRozan. But from a fantasy standpoint, Fox's fantasy rates still right around 1.45 or 1.5 DK points per minute. So he's going to look great. But for the usage rates, 35.9. Okay, so we're not getting to that 40 range, but 36. I am more than happy to go to De'Aaron Fox over 27.5 points here tonight against a Minnesota team that, look, man, I still think they are a good team. I respect them. I think they can compete with any team in this league on any given night. From the Celtics all the way down to Sixers are still last, I think, right? So we'll say the Sixers. Say the dregs of the league. Minnesota can compete with anybody on any given night. But I'd also be lying if I said I thought that they were the same caliber of team that they were last year. The defense has slipped a little bit, right? Offense a little bit more disjointed than we saw, of course, at the end of the year last year when they were rolling through the Western Conference playoffs, get to the conference finals. Timberwolves are just 3.5-point home favorites here, 218 implied total. But again, if this game is going to stay close, as it's projected to, I think it's on the back of another big De'Aaron Fox game. So again, projected for about 28.7 points here at FTN this morning. So that would be my third pick here of the dime, De'Aaron Fox over 27.5 points. So we pair that with Andre Drummond, higher than 7.5 rebounds. That's 1.05x. And Scotty Barnes over 7.5 rebounds. And that's 1.12x. So we get those in here on Underdog. And for a 3-pick play, well, and Fox is grayed out. Don't do it to me. We'll get a refresh. Come on, Underdog. All right, we're good. 27.5. Right? So our 3-pick then, that would give us a 7.05x multiplier on our 3-pick play. And that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good here this morning. Okay. So we can clear this off. We'll talk some DFS. Oops. Let's do a quick underdog search before we fully move on. Let's see if they've given us any stocks or any fantasy point props here this morning. Okay, stocks are up. So let's take a look. SAR less than 1. Multiplier, that is. Okay, Minnesota. We don't. I'm hoping we get some Sabonis stocks up against Minnesota. Right, our two spots that we've been targeting. Bigs, stocks, props, Minnesota and Utah front courts. Again, of course, Wembanyama just 3 blocks in that massive game he had last night, so he comes up short there. No Sabonis yet. Okay, let's go to our stat projections. And let's look at Jokic, because we've got Nikola Jokic going up against this Utah front court. For what it's worth, the Tool, very much a fan of Jokic over on his points prop. I think it's 28.5 here tonight. I was waiting for this. Okay, so we've got him projected just a hair shy of 2.5 stocks. But I think I like this prop. And another thing I noticed is that in terms of our Denver minutes, those might need to be shored up in the front court. And Jokic on the season, right? 2.3 stocks per game. He's never been a massive stocks guy. But we know that Utah front court gives up the stocks. So sweet. Wemby sitting at 3.5.84. Browse sitting at 2.5.82. Don't love those. We don't have any arrows to buy those up. Hartenstein 2.5 against the Warriors is a little bit interesting. It's a guy I really like on FanDuel as a center tonight. Right, like about 30 minutes for Hartenstein. Per 36 last year with the Knicks. He was 3.3 stocks per game. 2.5 stocks, 1.1x for the higher than 2.5. We've got him short of 2 here in 31 minutes. So maybe not chasing that right now, but something to look at. Let's see if we've got fantasy score props. Then we'll get into the DFS talk. Nothing from the fantasy scores yet. So we'll keep it with those 3 picks here this morning. Let's shift over to the DFS side of things. Get a refresh here just in case, yeah? And let's dive in. We'll look at DK primarily here. We'll get some FanDuel talk as we go. Again, still waiting on 9 injury reports, I believe. So plenty to keep your eyes on throughout the day. Of course, you need to be a subscriber here at FTN Fantasy. We're talking through all of these things as they come in, right? And I imagine that a number of you, whether you're subscribers here at FTN or not, were on Bobby Portis yesterday. Unfortunate. Especially when, if you were like me, you faded the extremely chalky Alex Sarr in favor of, still chalky Bobby Portis, but Sarr going off being under on that number. Oof. I felt lucky to recoup as much of my entry fees as I did last night, missing out on that Sarr game. And not enough Dame Lillard for me either. He was a top play. That's certainly not a hot take last night, but I think he was like 45% in the 20 maxes. That was a lot. So tonight, some of the injury situations that we're waiting on for teams that we already have the reports in for. Big one right off the rip is Trae Young. Okay. So we can pull up Atlanta. No ownership coming in here. Double-digit dogs against Cleveland. Believe this is in Cleveland. Yeah. 10-point home favorites are the Cavs. 240.5 implied total. So, of course, you can one off the Cavs guys. But if Trae sits, Maybe you get Bogdan in there next to Dyson Daniels. If you get Kobe Buffkin at 3,100, then I'm going to have some significant interest there because Keaton Wallace is down with the G League team. Maybe he gets called up, today if Trey sits. But with Buffkin back, they don't need Keaton Wallace to make this work. Buffkin and Bogdan back, right? So Buffkin at 3,100 would get blowout run if this game gets out of hand, and if he got the start, he would be a top value play for me here on this slate. But again, we just need that news. We need that starting lineup, and this is one of, I think, 6 games going off right at lock here today. 2, 4, so yeah, 6 games at 7 p.m. Eastern. So more than half of the 11-game DraftKings slate locks, almost half of the full slate locks, right at 7. It is going to be a scramble tonight, my friends. At least that's what it feels like to me. Portland could potentially bring us massive value as well. We do have their injury report. Okay, right now you're getting 22% projected ownership to Delano Banton, 21% to Denny Avdia. I prefer the latter here this morning because we are waiting on, and we'll get the 12:30 injury report here in a few minutes. But what we've got right now for the Blazers, Donovan Clingan is out, I believe, 2 weeks at least, knee issue. Time Lord is in concussion protocol. Okay, so we've got a questionable tag on DeAndre Ayton. He's been doubtful for the last week plus finger injury. So can DeAndre Ayton come back in and I think play full minutes tonight? Yes, I do think that could happen. And I think if that does come to pass, 6% DeAndre Ayton at 6,600, I don't think, who knows with DeAndre Ayton, right? But if he's going full minutes against this Pacers team, 232 implied total. Again, Blazers 10.5-point dogs, but if you can get anywhere close to upper 20s in minutes from Ayton at 6,600 in this matchup, I have some interest there, especially at single-digit ownership. We've also got Scoot Henderson questionable, right? So you see the Banton ownership there. To me, that is something I would stay completely away from on this big slate if Scoot is in, right? We've got Chris Murray also questionable here, and a doubtful tag on Jeremy Grant. So we don't think Grant is going to play. That's why I think Denny on both sites more than fine, and I don't think that ownership is out of hand yet, even on a double-digit game slate. But we need the Scoot news. We need Chris Murray news. Bryce McGowan's is questionable. Again, he's a two-way guy for them. So the fact that he is questionable, to me, I would lean that we're going to have guys like Scoot and Chris Murray out here. Of course, the doubtful Jeremy Grant. So Portland is a team that, again, could really shake things up. Because let's say, right, Grant is out as expected. Let's say Ayton sits, right? You may as well. I would default in my head do up Reith night. It could be Jabari Walker night too, and maybe both. But I want a lot of whomever would start in Ayton's place if he takes the seat, whether it's Reith, whether it's Walker. And we saw Jabari Walker start the second half for Time Lord last game after he was ruled out with the concussion. And Drew Lock playing or starting for the Giants tomorrow. That helps the Giants for sure. Miles Bridges has returned to individual on-court activity without a timetable for return. All right, so after that detour, Dallas, another team, once again, potentially very shorthanded here tonight. We know Luka is out. Big Q tags on Quentin Grimes, Derek Lively, Klay Thompson, right? Because if we get Klay and Grimes out again, guys have been priced up on DraftKings, but even against the Knicks, Jaden Hardy is in play. Spencer Dinwiddie is in play in that scenario. 9,600 for Kyrie, fine. But if you get Lively out as well, or just Lively out in general, Gafford 5,900, preemptively priced up there, but Gafford going to look better. PJ Washington 6,400, still probably a little bit cheap, and he's picking up the most ownership on this team this morning. All right, looks like we've got Bulls coming in here on the 12:30 injury report. Hit refreshes till we get it. Jalen Smith is listed questionable. I think he's been on the injury report for weeks. Maybe years, depending on how you look at it. We'll keep it moving. We'll get that injury report up here shortly. Cade Cunningham is doubtful once again. And we've got Tobias Harris questionable. Pistons in Memphis tonight, 8-point dogs, 225 implied total. Tobias is pulling the most projected ownership right now, right around 20%. He's 6,300 on DraftKings. I get it. With Cade out, we know the rates go up for Jaden Ivey, a little bit for Malik Beasley as well in that starting group, and guard forward eligible Tim Hardaway Jr. at 4K also in play. You can see the field paying attention there as well, right around 15%. But if Tobias sits, right, THJ, Beasley going to become that much more important. You might see Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart, right, place him for Fontecchio's minutes projection would come up. You're probably getting some Wendell Moore minutes at that point. Also Thompson, 4,100. If we knew the minutes were going to come up, if you know me, you know I love me some Oscar Thompson. 4,100, really tough to get there unless we know that the minutes are going to come up. And even then, you probably want Tobias out to get there. But that's another injury situation to watch. We talked about Sacramento, right, with no DeRozan, with no Lyles, when we were talking about the Fox prop. Brooklyn could be another team providing some massive value. Can't get it on the DraftKings main slate, but 3-game late slate, so that's where you'd find it on DK. And then the FanDuel has priced some of those guys up. But you've got Claxton, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, all questionable. Cam Thomas and Noah Clowney are out. So late slate on DK, main slate on FanDuel. It's going to be really interesting how you play this on FanDuel because, again, I think we're going to get some awesome-looking plays in that first 6 games that lock at 7 p.m. So how much are we going to tie up on FanDuel in those first games, and how much is still going to be hanging out there from some of these later games in terms of an injury report and opportunities to potentially late swap over there on FanDuel. Brooklyn is one to watch. Another one to watch from these late games, the late night hammer, right? 10 p.m. Eastern, Warriors hosting the Thunder. Thunder are 2-point road favorites, 229.5 implied total. Stephen Curry is questionable. So is Jonathan Kuminga again. 2-point spread in favor of the Thunder makes me think Steph Curry is going to play here tonight. So I'm not super concerned about that, about having to, I didn't leave enough space to swap around to a Brandon Pajemski or somebody of that nature. But he is questionable. So let's take a look from a wide view before we get out of here. Sorry, Albert. I know this question's been hanging almost 10 minutes here in the chat. What's your approach on LeBron? Can't seem to get him right as far as when to play him, when not to play him. Well, I don't have a hard and fast rule really on almost anybody. I mean, we are getting to the point of the season where home road splits for certain guys, like Tyrese Halliburton has been a conversation piece in that regard this week. You start to see these really drastic home and away splits, and okay, maybe we can play into that. But when it comes to LeBron specifically, he's actually not somebody I play all that often. And when I get beat by a, vintage game from the King these days, really the last couple years, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, does LeBron have the 70-plus fantasy points, slate-breaking type of game still in the arsenal? Of course he does. Of course he does. But on a slate like this, right, you're missing Luka. Joel Embiid is not Joel Embiid, and he's out. Cade Cunningham is doubtful. So we don't have a ton of the high-end options in terms of that 5-figure pricing tier on DraftKings. But, Albert, if you're giving me Wemby and Anthony Davis in that same game with LeBron, or LaMelo Ball even against Miami, LeBron's going to be fourth of that group of four for me. That doesn't mean he's out of my player pool in my MME build. Of course not. Of course I'm going to keep LeBron in there. And whatever LeBron shares I get, I'm fine with. Like, I'm not going to be sitting there like, oh, I need less LeBron here tonight. So maybe that's not a great answer. But for me, it's just that specifically on LeBron, I just don't. Who's going to get me to the top of the leaderboard more often? Wemby, the Brow, LaMelo, or 40-year-old LeBron? And he can still do it. He's still averaging over 50 DK points per game, but a less consistent upside. And the fact that he's only $800 cheaper than Wemby tonight, he's only $500 cheaper than Brow. He is pretty clearly, to me, if I had, if we're building lineups and the slate starts in 5 minutes, it's not somebody I would get to tonight. Awesome. Derek says, Lonzo Ball Q tag. More importantly, sorry I'm late with this, prop or DFS question. Fire it in here, Derek. Yeah, Lonzo Q tag, it doesn't do much. Oh, Brian Robinson will practice today. Interesting. This is Derek. Derek, we got a trade deadline in the Dynasty League today, my friend. Okay, here we go. Claxton questionable, clowning out. Any love to Nurkic rebounds again? Should they be out? And is it Trendon Watford for 30 minutes? So the thing about Watford is, last time out, they're really shorthanded, right? Expected Watford to start. And not only did he not start, comes off the bench, less than 15 minutes. You get 33 minutes from Jalen Wilson off the bench. You get 21 minutes from Shake Milton off the bench. And again, it's like Ben Simmons almost played his career high. His season high in minutes. He was just shy of 27. You only got 23 from Nick Claxton. It's really tough to get Watford from a DFS perspective. And again, that you're only considering him on FanDuel because he's not on the DK main slate. But from a props perspective, let's see what we've got Nurk's rebounds at. 8.4 rebounds is the projection here, Derek. Let me see what Nurkic's line is at on Underdog. 10.5 rebounds. So just from reading what the model has here this morning, I'm not chasing it, and I'm just not super enthused about playing Yusuf Nurkic. Part of the reason why is what we talked about yesterday, and maybe it's just that I'm less risk averse when it comes to Nurk, but he's just so volatile in terms of the minutes. And he has not been the model of health so far this season, or really throughout his career, but he's been in and out of the lineup this season. We've seen him leave in the middle of games, battling through ankle injuries and things of that nature. He's a guy, right? Phoenix as a team, we don't have their injury report yet, but I would not be surprised to see Durant or Beal take a seat on the second end of the back-to-back. They didn't have to play a ton of minutes last night. Both of those guys were on minutes restrictions, but Nurk also been dealing with the injuries. They've got Plumlee there. They've got rookie Oso Ighodaro. So they've got bodies. Suns are 8.5-point home favorites. They're 219 implied total. So it's not one that I love, Derek. But again, maybe it's just because I'm just a little bit more hesitant on Nurk in general. All right. Ownership. We've got it sorted on the screen. I'm a Tijan Salon fan. As a prospect, as a young player, he was somebody that I really wanted my favorite team to draft at the 8 pick. And I think Charlotte taking him at the 6 may have contributed to the Minnesota Timberwolves getting Rob Dillingham with the 8th pick, making that trade with San Antonio. And from a minutes perspective here with Charlotte, can't deny the minutes that Salon's going to get. Should start again. Right? I think played a hair over 30 last time. Pull up that game log. Of course, they don't have it. So we'll go to the backup. And we got 30 minutes on the nose for Salon last time out. Like I mentioned, Miles Bridges still out, Trey Mann out, and of course the entire front court, right? Richards, Grant Williams, Mark Williams, all out. But I don't know, man. 40+% ownership on a 11-game slate on DraftKings for a guy like Tidjane Salaün, even at 3,500. I do think that number comes way down as the day progresses. Because we're going to get news. We're going to get more value opening up. But I have zero interest in Tidjane Salaün at that number. His usage rate is just, it can be non-existent. Again, he played 30 minutes last game. 3 shots. Taking a shot once every 10 minutes that he's on the court. And again, it's not like he is the peripheral god either. So I get it. The minutes, the price, I get it at this point in the morning, but like it does not taste good. It doesn't even smell good. 42% Tidjane Salaün. Now Zubac second at 28%. Going up against Washington. I can get with that. Miles Turner going up against Portland. Especially if there's no DeAndre Ayton. Not that he's some, defensive force, but Turner 6,500. I can get with that. Brandon Miller, right? You got another Hornet there. I can get with that. 7,400. Played near 40 minutes in regulation here tonight. Played 38 against the Magic the other night. Miami on the second end of a back-to-back. Maybe they're sitting a guy or two. We'll see. So I think some of these other guys picking up a lot of ownership. Not that I'm in love with them, but they feel a lot better to me than Salaün in terms of the ownership. Again, I think Banton, we have to wait and see. Got to wait and see on if Scoot's going to play or not. Also, another note on the Hornets. They're just 3.5-point home dogs here to the Heat. 218 implied total. That, with how shorthanded Charlotte is, that really feels like we're going to get some Miami absences. Right? 3.5-point spread between those two. Harden, you can pair him with Zubac. You got a questionable tag on Norman Powell. This would be a little bit better for Harden with Norman Powell out, because then it is completely the James Harden show. But $9K for Harden. Again, we talked about kind of the lack of big-time spend-ups on the slate. Wemby 10-8 is the most expensive player. I wouldn't be surprised to see that ownership hold or even climb a little bit higher if we get more value throughout the day. Jabari Smith, 4,700. Good matchup against Philly. Moussa Diabate, another Charlotte guy up there, even coming off the bench last time, cracked 30 minutes. So with his power forward center eligibility, 5K. You don't like the matchup for him in that Miami front court, but again, where we're at this morning, the ownership makes sense. Let's see what the model is seeing, though. GPP scores. And this, GPP scores has been crushing. Love John Collins yesterday. John Collins comes through with the, certainly not a slate-breaking game, but 40-plus DK points again. So you see, the tool loves LaMelo at 15%, Brandon Miller at 22%. Not an 11-game slate. Those are not insignificant numbers. So the tool is looking at this Charlotte team, the guys who should get the big minutes. You see Diabate as the 4th guy in the GPP scores. Got my attention. Anthony Davis third, 3.5% projected ownership. I could have some of that too. It's like you can count on one hand, I think, the individual players in this league that Victor Wembanyama has struggled with throughout the first year and a quarter of his career. Anthony Davis is on that list. DraftKings perspective, the 3 times that these guys have played against each other, Anthony Davis, 38 minutes. Now, I was at that game, 38 minutes without LeBron, but 38 minutes, 60.5 DK points. 2 months later, right coming out of the All-Star break, 29 minutes, 47.25 DK points. Again, you expect him to play more than that tonight, mid to upper 30s. And then just last week, or 2 weeks ago, the first group stage game in the NBA Cup for these two teams was in San Antonio as well, just like it is tonight. And again, here tonight, Lakers 2-point road favorites, 227 implied total. In that one, Anthony Davis, 40 real points, right? 36 minutes, 65.5 DK points. So I'm a fan of Anthony Davis. And I think you should be too with that GPP score. Now, let's not get it twisted. I'm going to have some Wembanyama in there too. You see him here in the top 10, right? Number 9 in the GPP scores, 5% ownership. Again, this is going to be shaken up drastically throughout the day with the news. And if it doesn't, then I'm smashing a bunch of Anthony Davis and Victor Wembanyama into my lineups. Because there's no way these guys should be 5% tonight. Anything else sticking out here? Jalen Suggs is up there at 10%, 6,500, going up against Chicago. We already have confirmation that he will play tonight. 224.5 implied total. Magic 10-point home favorites. You don't hate that. Jared McCain, too, 7,300 on that Philadelphia team. Not a great matchup against Houston, but a 5-point spread. You know he's going to play almost the entire game. And this is a spot where I flat out disagree with RJ Barrett interest. In my opinion, he's still too expensive for what his rate should be with Barnes back in here. Scotty Barnes is the alpha on this team, no matter who is healthy. If he's out there and he's playing full minutes, that's the guy you want. Guard forward eligible is Scotty Barnes, so you're paying $400 more, but you've got more positional flexibility. And look, I disagree with the projection here too, having RJ Barrett higher. An 11-game slate, I'm not going to agree with everything the model spits out. And frequently the model is right and I can be wrong. You see Scotty Barnes still a fine GPP score, not picking up ownership either. 8,700. I'm a fan. Anything else here? See LeBron up there in GPP score. Sabonis as well. Can certainly get to some Sabonis. Amin Thompson, 5,500. Let's see if anybody sits on the Houston side. Of course, you've got Amin Thompson waiting in the wings. Tari Eason. Still waiting on your injury report. De'Aaron Fox, 3%, right? 9,100. With that usage rate we talked about between 36 and 39%, depending on who's on the floor with DeMar off. Fox at sub 4%. That's a pretty interesting pivot off James Harden chalk at the moment. And before we shut it down, real quick on FanDuel. I see Salon 50%. No, thank you. Denny 44, again, that makes sense to me. 5,800 with Grant doubtful. Quentin Jackson 36%. I think that feels like a factor of just not having the news, not having the value. The value hasn't emerged yet this morning. Because I'm a QJ fan, right? This is a guy that we love in Summer League. We're a fan of in preseason DFS. Even in this starting role, though, he's got a real floor on him. And I'm not sure we have to, especially if you're just building one lineup, on a site like FanDuel with 14 games, I'm not sure you need to take a risk like that, or a perceived risk, right? You might love Quentin Jackson going up against Portland here tonight. I'm not saying he's out of play. That's just a lot of ownership for a guy like that. Yeah. Hartenstein there at 14%. He was in my placeholder, 6,800 against Golden State. It doesn't hurt that it's the last game of the night, right? So I'm going to have that flexibility throughout the slate if I want to, change it up at 8 Eastern because some news dropped, unexpected late scratch or what have you, giving me the flexibility. So he made it in there. GPP scores. John Collins again, and I got to agree with it, 7,500. We talked in chat yesterday in the FTN Fantasy Discord. We talked about his rates and what he's done this season with no Jordan Clarkson. Again, we need the injury report for the Jazz. Love Şengün, Diabate, a lot of centers up here in the GPP scores on FanDuel. It loves LaMelo as well, Brandon Miller. So you're seeing some similar names. A lot of love for the centers. And you do like, you see Anthony Davis and Wemby here. And the fact that they have forward center eligibility really, helps you get there. And nobody getting there right now. 2% on Wemby, 3% on Anthony Davis. Cam Johnson participating in shoot-around on Wednesday. So maybe we get some more shoot-around news on the other Q tags from Brooklyn. But almost an hour here on the Solo Daily Dime on Wednesday. So that'll be enough for now. Again, FTN Fantasy subscribers, be in the Discord later on, closer to lock. Any other props that I have, we'll drop them into that Pick'em Games channel as well. Appreciate you tuning in, sticking with me here on a long Wednesday edition of the Daily Dime. Again, if you're watching on YouTube live or on the replay, right, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. If you're on Twitter, like the video, retweet that tweet, help us grow the channel, help us grow the stream. And programming note, of course, no hoops tomorrow, so no stream. But I know if you are an FTN Fantasy subscriber, we've got the matchup show for the Thanksgiving slate was last night. You can find the link to that in the Discord and on the site. I know there's college basketball content on our Thanksgiving too, so plenty of stuff going on between now and when you next see me on this stream, which will be on Monday. Both Alex and myself going to take Friday morning off. So FTN subscribers, you'll see us on Friday evening, right? Getting ready for the NBA slate, all that good stuff. If we've got pick'em or prop picks, we'll put them in the Pick'em Games channel on Friday afternoon. But Friday morning, we're gonna digest, we're gonna recover, maybe wake up, have some more leftovers, all that good stuff. Everybody, enjoy your Thanksgiving. You as well, Derek. Happy Turkey Day. Enjoy, friends, family, food, football, college hoops. And of course, we got to get through this NBA slate first here tonight. A massive one. Keep your eye on the news. Appreciate you tuning in. I will see you guys back here on this stream on Monday. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Goodbye.